What is the future for our world? How will we know it when it arrives? Unarius and Searl Magnetics gave a demonstration and lecture on Earth's positive future, where spirit is joined with technology and will work in harmony with the cosmos to give our world a non-polluting, unlimited source of energy. And now, here's part 2 of Inventing Our Positive Future.
Who is Professor John Roy Robert Searl? He was born on May 2nd, 1932, raised in an orphanage, and was poorly treated by his foster family, beaten until he was mostly deaf. Left to think for himself, John wasn't programmed by schools. He had recurring dreams that led him to develop a different understanding of nature, math, energy, and the world at large. There were 2 dreams which occurred twice a year for 6 years. Dream 1 consisted of hopscotch squares, and Dream 2 consisted of a ring of fire with a calm center. Now, these 2 dreams led John to write volumes of booklets called The Law of Squares, which delve into everything from physics to medical science to energy, electricity, philosophy, and a whole lot more. So as a 14-year-old, John Searl started working for British Rewind Electric Repairs Limited in London, England. This is where he experimented with his ideas from his dreams and proved that there was more to magnets and electricity than what we are commonly taught today. The electric company is where the principles for the SEG and the Searl effect were born. John soon left the electric company and became a chemist's assistant. He was later employed at Shenley Hospital studying histology and bacteriology. At 16, John won a 6-year grant to study neurosurgery at Cambridge. But his adoptive guardian refused to sign the paperwork which would allow that doctor in the hospital to care for him. Said, no, you're not going to do it. So John Searl's life could have been very different. He could have been a brain surgeon, we don't know. But he ended up studying electrical engineering and had many jobs over the years that correlated with electrical engineering, like electronic fitter at Midland's Electricity Board. He was a prototype wireman for the Royal Air Force, as well as wiring systems for the naval gun control computers used by NATO. Very technical background.
I want to add something here, folks. The Searl Magnetics is set up as a laboratory to investigate the technology. But that's not the way John Searl did it. He worked for Midland Electricity. Now keep in mind that represents massive resources, engineers, power, machinery, everything that he needs. So he happened to be the right person at the right place to do what he did. We're not that fortunate, but at least we're making progress with Searl Magnetics. In other words, he started from the top, we're starting from the bottom up in terms of science and engineering. And so really it's a program of redeveloping what he has done before. We do not have those massive resources, but at least we're progressing and heading the right direction. We are proving out the technology.
Now, what is the Searl effect generator? The SEG is a linear motor operating on a frictionless magnetic bearing. All of the moving parts don't touch each other, like 2 magnets that want to repel. Similar to how the maglev train floats above the track as it travels, which we will demonstrate with this unit later. It's a motor and a generator. The SEG converts the heat and radiation and surrounding frequencies into usable electricity. The SEG is an open system, much like a windmill. As long as there's wind, it will turn the blades of the fan, and those fan can be connected to a generator which will make electricity.
All the energy that we need is here and now. We do not need to smash it, burn it, like we do with conventional technology. We do not have to, it's not necessary to compromise the environment. And that's what the Searl technology does for us. It works with the abundance it's already all around us, and we'll explain a little bit further.
So the SEG harnesses ambient heat in a similar fashion as a windmill. The surrounding heat and radiation is the fuel for the SEG. It does not need to be connected to a battery. Anything above absolute zero is heat and radiation. Therefore, the SEG can convert that heat into usable electricity regardless of its environment. What we see here, I have an example, are these segmented rollers. There's 8 stacked on top of each other to make one complete roller. The innermost material is neodymium, which is element 60, unmagnetized, raw, unmagnetized neodymium. This acts as an electron reservoir, as he calls it, and a collector for that energy, similar to how a lake bed collects the natural rain from the environment.
Now you'll notice that the large ring represents really a stator, for those who are familiar with electrical engineering, whereas the rollers represents a rotor. Except that with the SEG you have multiple rollers, or rotors, in fact 12 of them. It's a unique design, and based on that information we can work with it as an engineer to develop it. The principles of engineering are inherent in this technology. It just needs to be understood and investigated, which is what we've been doing at Searl Magnetics.
There's 4 materials, the first being neodymium, the innermost. The second layer, that white, is Teflon, which was originally nylon 66, he used in the 40s and 50s. The third layer is the uniquely magnetized ferrite, and these magnets act as an accelerator for the energy. The outermost layer is copper, which collects that energy and then emits it, and it distributes it to standard coils. The Searl effect generator has 3 concentric stator rings with 8 segments on each roller. 12 rollers on the first ring, 22 on the second, and 32 on the outermost.
That completes a full prototype. That's what we're all focused on at this time, is to develop the 15 kilowatt version, which happens to be the smallest design that we can make using John's technique. But from there it is scalable to 50, 500, or a megawatt. So we can see that we can address those needs for, let's say, a resort in an island, or we can scale it down to 15 kilowatts, which you see there, which is suitable for a home. What this means is that you're independent of the grid, and that's nice. You're not subject to brownouts, and you limit all the wiring, ugly wiring that's going around, and it just makes the delivery of power more dependable for everybody. There are also side effects in having one at home. It'll refresh the air. It'll kill viruses and bacteria that happen to be floating around. Dust that happens to be in the air will get charged, and because we're talking about a negative ionization process, and the floor is relatively positive, so it floats down or gets electrically driven down. So this is great for people who have asthma, and the way John also described it is it becomes very energetic. It's very refreshing.
Now, what is the Searl effect? The Searl effect is based on a unique form of magnetization, where specific waves are imprinted onto a material. The materials are magnetized in a way that is not practiced in today's industry and is not taught in standard electronic engineering schools. When these materials are in motion in relation to each other, the waveform begins to interact and produce electricity while converting the surrounding heat. In addition to producing electricity, the SEG gets very cold and generates a negative charge within its vicinity, as Fernando mentioned earlier. And studies show that negative ions and negative charges can kill bacteria, kill viruses, and promote a healthier environment than what we live in today. The Searl effect also includes the materials spinning without any friction or air drag. There's no friction because of the eddy currents, which prevent the parts from touching, like two magnets that want to repel. If you have copper and you have a magnet in motion next to each other, they want to repel each other. There's no air drag in the SEG prototype because the moving parts are generating such massive electric charges that it's pushing the air away from the device, generating a vacuum around itself, which prevents oxidation of those materials. Those magnetic waves are acting like magnetic gears, keeping everything in sync, and they spin as they orbit the stator. This is the main difference between John Searl's magnets and all other known magnets, is that everybody knows magnets to have a north and a south, top and bottom, positive, negative. John Searl figured out a way to magnetize a material to put waves and complex poles onto a magnet. So in addition to there just being a north and a south, there are waves of poles imprinted onto the material, which results in very different behaviors and beneficial effects.
I should add at this point that that was one of my first tasks, because I have some electrical background, is to try to prove or demonstrate this phenomena or this effect that you can develop waveforms on magnetic material. Because as we all know, magnets are just north and south. You know, simple enough. That's what the industry does. But what he was describing is waveforms on top of it. And that was hard to understand because you can't find that in any books or any references that I know of. So I had to start from scratch. I had to build my own magnetizer. And not the flash discharge that the industry uses these days, but something that uses the correct amount of forces. And gradually I started detecting evidence of it. And it took me a while, but eventually I was able to demonstrate without a doubt that yes, you can impress waveforms on magnetic or magnets. And this is what this unit is all about. In fact, this platform I built from scratch so we can scan and detect that waveform, which is evident right here. So we got a Gauss meter. Here's the sensor. The analog output goes to the oscilloscope, and we can now demonstrate and show this waveform.
So there are major differences between Searl's technology and all conventional technology, regular motors and generators that we use today. Here are some of the differences. Contrast between uniform, coherent, or ordered technologies and more random or chaotic technologies. The SEG is uniform and coherent, whereas conventional is random and chaotic. When you draw power from the SEG, or with a load, it speeds up, and the magnets start to spin faster. In a conventional generator, when you draw power from it, they want to slow down. With the SEG, the more power you draw, the colder it gets, because it's having to convert more heat to generate more power. In a conventional generator, the more energy that you draw from it, the more that they want to heat up and break. The SEG is frictionless and noiseless. No wear, no tear, no sound. None of the parts touch, nothing to make any noise. In a conventional generator, you usually have a crankshaft or a bearing or parts touching, chains, and you're going to have heat, friction, and noise. Now, the following slides are images of Professor John Searl's more controversial achievements. And what we see here is him building this disc, which he called the Demo 1, and ended up flying this around remote controlling, and successfully was demonstrating this in front of many, many people.
There are two areas that this technology covers. It's the Searl technology as a generator, and then there's a side effect which affects gravity. And when John first developed his first prototypes, they wouldn't stay on the table, okay? They would energize, rev up, and end up on the ceiling. It wouldn't stay down. That was his initial problem because all he was trying to do is create a generator, but this thing wouldn't stay down. It wasn't until he put in the dielectric layer that he was able to control it. So that's what he did after that. He said to himself, well, if this thing doesn't want to stay down, we'll build a structure around it to control it. So you still have an SEG in there around the perimeter, but now you have a structure that allows it to take in energy from the center, electrical, and emit it through the sharp edges on the periphery. So what you have is a framework that allows the SEG to, as an open system, to emit and absorb energy from the center. And the media that it uses for harnessing energy is the electron itself.
Would it be over unity?
No, it's not over unity because you can measure the energy going into it and coming out. It is really an energy converter, that's all. It's converting energy that's already around us.
As much energy as you are drawing is as much energy as it is converting.
So, go ahead.
So would that be a characterized as a toroidal effect then?
Absolutely.
Yes. Now, here's an article showing John Searl flying his devices around, and the title says, Mr. Searl expected to offer day trips to the moon. Now, he originally had plans to build a manned craft, but never received the appropriate funding to do so. So his dreams can still become a reality if we are to get the funding necessary. But the first and foremost aspect of this technology is the energy generation part. The flying aspect of it would come later. John Searl found that the more power he drew from his device, the colder it got until it overloaded. If you try to draw more energy than what a normal generator can provide, it's going to heat up and break. When John attempted to draw more power than what the SEG could provide, it got so cold, flooded with so much energy, that it became superconductive, developed its own magnetic or electric field, and actually flew away, never to be seen again.
And really, that's what distinguishes the generator from this technology, is that we never allow the SEG to go superconductive because then you manifest this other effect. So if you want to keep it as a generator, we have to limit the currents. Now, so if it's a 15 kilowatt generator, we have conventional circuitry that will limit the currents so that you can keep your generator.
So John used ham radio to remotely control what he called a levity disk. John Searl prefers the term inverse gravity as opposed to anti-gravity. You're not canceling or negating gravity, but you are inversing its function. So whereas we are being pushed to the Earth currently, the Earth then pushes us away. The U.S. Air Force even sent letters requesting that John Searl send his work to their Propulsion and Energy Research Department. Here's a letter from a George Eulig from the U.S. Air Force detailing that they are interested in what he called a disc-shaped type of flying craft, and at no charge to the government. If he could send all of the information to them, they'd really appreciate that. John successfully flew his inverse gravity vehicle, or IGV, in front of many witnesses, including the BBC News. The BBC ran weekly pieces on John Searl's work in progress for almost a year. These television broadcasts showed the levity disk in flight and gave updates on the work being done to build a large craft. What happened to Professor John Searl's work? Most of John Searl's original work was destroyed by fire while he was out of town for a few days. All of his belongings were gathered up on the front yard and burned with the aid of police supervision. The home where John conducted, where he lived when he conducted these original experiments has since been bulldozed and demolished. It took years for him to acquire enough support and try to pick up where he left off time and time again. In 2003, John had poison put in his drink by people who said they wanted to invest. And in 2005, all the equipment you see here and more that you don't see in this picture was stolen from his home. Gone.